What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Canes Insight Daily podcast powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. Welcome to Breakfast with the Canes. It is Saturday morning, 8:45 a.m. Couple practices in the books. We're talking real football. We're not just making lists and projections and recruiting stuff. We are talking about actual football. Me and Pete have been out there at both practices. So we will talk here about the things we've seen, really players that have stood out to us for the first 2 days. Again, contact is limited. We can only really talk about the media portion of practice, so that's a smaller portion of practice. So we're not trying to make these very, very specific evaluations. This is more just about general kind of things that jump out that should be obvious to somebody who is watching, which I think is very important sometimes when things stand out and are things that hit you instantly to make sure you store that away, because usually those first impressions are very valuable. So we'll talk about that. Also, contact's going to ramp up this week, starting tomorrow and Sunday. Going to be the most physical practice thus far. Today is really just a light walkthrough of Saturday. So we want to talk about some players that we are excited to see in pads. And, just, you really don't know what certain positions have until they're taking contact and really playing football. So we'll talk about some of those guys that we're looking forward to seeing. First, some folks that you definitely want to be looking forward to seeing if you or someone you care about has been in an accident. That's Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been in an accident, 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in from the West Coast with
the West Coast of Florida, just to calm everyone down. We're still in this great state, but yeah, man, been a first couple good days of practice, and excited to talk about some of these guys that we've seen, and obviously things will ramp up here with the pads coming on and the physicality ramping up. And I think it's important, man, because you have a lot of guys coming back from injury, a lot of transfer guys that you're relying on at different spots that they look healthy now, and the reports have been good, but the pads will start popping now. And once the physicality ramps up a little bit, I think we'll really get a sense of how healthy guys are and how ready they are to be impact players for this team this year.
Yeah, I'm just glad I'm done with the list, man. It was too much. Sorry, my throat's a little scratchy. I have I was at the Marlins game yesterday to see my cat. Miami taking out the Yankees, one of the best games I've seen ever in that stadium. Obviously, not including the Orange Bowl. So it was a lot of fun, man. Watch out for the Marlins. They'll be 500 before the week is done. Manny's saying it's finally starting to look a certain way at Miami. Pete, before we get into some of the specifics, I know you're very big on body. You're the body type connoisseur. So what would you say about Manny's comment now that you've seen the roster here with all the additions, summer of working out? You're seeing pretty much everybody out there. Very few people in the tent. How's it looking?
I think certainly upgraded at different spots, right? We're very aware at defensive back. We're very aware, I think at like defensive end, they look really, really good. I think it's it's a double-edged sword when you talk about some of these things, because we're going to talk about someone here. One of the guys who's impressed me as a freshman wide receiver, and he looks a lot different than others at that position. Like, that's a position that it needs to look a little bit different. I don't know that they're there yet in terms of looks. Running back, it looks fantastic, right? When your third stringer is 5'10", 220 plus, and can probably play for, be a starter for most teams in your conference. It just looks right. So there's still some spots, I think, D tackle, we talk about it like it's the way that they play the scheme. They're not going to need 330 plus pounders consistently in there, but I still think that you would like to see a little bit more size in there. But overall, yes, it definitely looks better than it's looked.
So let's get started, Pete. Let's just talk about some players that have caught our attention through the first couple days. Again, all the disclaimers apply. It's early, whatever. But I believe in first impressions. I think just when you see something happen right away and it's the first thing that we kind of comment on and talk about, that's usually something that carries over into the season. So I'm going to start with somebody we were talking about this time last year as a true freshman and saying, man, this guy might help us. Obviously ended up being a freshman All-America. Had that game against Syracuse, which was a nightmare for him. Really his only bad game of the year. Goes to Iowa State, plays well in the first half, gets hurt. Still wearing that non-contact, but he's basically full go. And I think he is very ready to have a big year and avoid a sophomore slump. And that is OJ Frederic, the corner, freshman All-America last year. You see him out there again. He's wearing the black jersey, so he's technically non-contact, but he's bumping, running. He's doing all those kind of things. I don't see any issue there. He's put on big weight. I mean, he's not like bulky or slow or anything, but he is not light. He is a big corner, 6 foot, maybe 6'1", and stronger than he was as a freshman. He was already physical as a freshman, didn't have any problem tackling. But I just think the fact that he's a hard worker, which I've always heard about him, you see it in his just physical changes, and then on the field, breaking up a lot of passes, playing with a lot of confidence. Sometimes you see quarterbacks lose confidence. We always talk about DJ Ivey because he's one of our favorite players to talk about. Obviously, a very polarizing player while he was here, had a lot of struggles. Now making some waves with Bengals in Bengals camp. But with him, we always said, hey, it's confidence, man. When he loses confidence, he's really not that good. When he has confidence, he can play with anybody. Keontae Scott, Miami's nickel, who they brought in from Auburn, great in 2023.
Love him.
But then 2024 loses his confidence, whole different player. My big takeaway from a Frederic standpoint, along with the fact he's gained the weight, is he, at least in practice, does not look like he's lost confidence at all. He is carrying himself like he can cover everybody. He is breaking up passes. He is just looking to me like somebody who could go, we've seen in Alabama, for example, if they're freshman All-Americas, by the time they're sophomores, they're usually All-Americas, right? Miami, we've seen freshman All-Americas sometimes take a step back. Now, Francis Mount would be an exception to that, right? He was freshman All-America, then he had a really good second year. Ruben Bain, freshman All-America, took a little step back the next year. I think Frederic, and it's early, I feel more confident that he's going to be more in that Francis Mount category, where by this time next year, we're talking about him as like a top 10, first round type pick because he had a good sophomore year, as opposed to a Bain who's still getting buzz. But, the question is, can he regain form? I think Frederic trending in the right direction.
Yeah, he had a really nice play in the first practice where he jumped I don't think it was one-on-one. This was like 7-on-7 stuff. He jumped a comeback. He would have had a pick 6 on it. And I said it that day, man. I think people were, unjustly tough on him based off a one-game performance. And you forget the body of work he had the entire year. I think that also, as a young corner, you have to imagine that teams, as the season went on, and it was really only that Syracuse game. I can't remember another game where you could say that they were really going at him, but there's a full season of film on him at that point. You got to understand that they're watching tendencies and all that, and I think that he's going to just come back this year stronger and take his game to a different level, because he knows he's on the radar now. And last year he kind of catch some people by surprise. I don't see that being the case this year. I see him building on what he did. And look, I've seen some comments to say this guy may not start. His spot should not be secure after how the season ended last year. I'm pretty confident this guy's going to be one of your starting corner, one of your top 2 corners this year. There's a lot of talent in that group, but I see it hard for him not to be one of the 2 guys, 3 guys out there.
I agree. So Jake Campbell says, Pete looks like the saleswoman of the year dragged you to a party that you didn't sign up for last night and you got home 10 minutes ago.
Dude, I'm looking straight into the sun right now. I wish I could take these. I hate wearing sunglasses. They're so.
I don't think I've ever seen you in them, honestly.
I don't like them. I was forced to buy them for my European vacation, and then I didn't wear them again until this trip. So that shows you what I think about them. But I'd be pretty toast right now without them.
I never wear them.
Current situation.
That's why I got these things here on the side. I've never in my life worn sunglasses. I don't like to wear them either. But
I will say this jersey is an Ajax jersey, inspired by, and was this Pablo Picasso's Starry Night? So in terms of the tropical comments, yeah, this particular kit was inspired by the Starry Night piece of art. I think it was Picasso. Not exactly sure,
You
but
come back from Europe, so cultured, man. So before we switch to your pick for someone who's jumped out at you, SP1 says Damari looks like he wants a starting position. He was actually the other person I was going to, I was between talking about with him and Frederic. I talked about him yesterday. I agree. He's making a big push. I compare him, not in terms of game or anything, totally different position, but just the way they look. He looks like a 6'1" Njoku, David Njoku. I mean, this guy is if you drew it up, this is how it looks, and he's playing well. So, there it is. Thank you,
Van
Trey.
Gogh. There you go. Was Van Gogh the one who bit his own ear off or something? I don't know. One of those guys did some crazy things.
I'm from Florida, man. We fly our flags half mast for Hulk Hogan. Ask me about SummerSlam tonight. I'll give you a breakdown. Don't ask me about any kind of European art. That's not going to be my forte. But Beat, who jumped out at you the first day here, the first 2 days?
Josh Moore at the wide receiver position for sure, and he was who I was referencing when I said it looks different. He's a different level of athlete than I think what you have across the board in terms of height, weight, speed, the body control. Right? It's easy to say a guy can run, can jump, and can do these athletic things in a vacuum. Right? Like there's a lot of guys who can do that, but this guy's a real good football player too. We talk a lot about Malachi Tony as a doing the little things as a receiver. We talk about JoJo Trader, how he's a gamer. And I think with Josh Moore, we've just kind of said, hey, this guy's big and fast. And we haven't really said that he was a very consistent player during spring. I think that the word that I used a lot with him and was thrown to me was he was a flash player who was going to have a role on this team, but we would see, how consistent he was now during camp. I just think that he's someone you can't necessarily keep off the field, D. And I saw a comment here, and I wanted to answer it about, I think it was from Jake Campbell. He says, has Josh Moore gone from intriguing player for next year to potentially pushing CJ Daniels by mid-year? What would this mean for the group? I think you need both of those guys out there, quite frankly. I don't know that this is a CJ Daniels thing. I think I would like both of those guys on the field at the same time. I don't know that I want to take CJ Daniels out because he's a guy who's impressed me as well with, his ability to get open at his size, D. So I don't know this is an indictment on anyone necessarily. I just think that when you have a really, really talented player who is showing they're ready for the moment, right? And then it doesn't seem like it's too big for him right now. I think you need to get him out there. He's 6'3", 6'4", 215. You saw the interview that I did with him the other day. Good kid. Working on staying as flexible as possible with that added weight. But we've talked about his athleticism time and time again here. I just think that Beck, and a lot of the plays he's made has been kind of like high pointing the football, just kind of going over the top of people. But we understand that's what Beck, he likes to trust his receivers to do that. So I think he's a perfect fit because CJ Daniels isn't that sort, like he's a bigger body guy, 6'1 plus, 6'1.5 maybe, but he's not the same player as Isaiah Horton necessarily, right? They're different sort of receivers, and I think Moore brings you more of that physical aspect.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say, look, I was talking to my guy Mike, the original number 8 at practice yesterday, and one thing he talked about that he worked with Mike Harley on, who was someone he mentored, was basically when you come off the ball. And he told him this from when he was a young age. When you come off the ball, you're carrying yourself like you're going to get the ball. That's the urgency you're playing with. That's the confidence you're playing with. That's just kind of your attitude. And I think you can tell every receiver wants the ball, right? But you can tell when a receiver really has that kind of extra level of confidence that I'm going to run this route. I know I'm going to be open. I know I'm going to get the ball. And the quarterback knows that I'm going to do that. And he's going to be good looking for me, right? The classic example would be last year, Xavier Restrepo. 4'8", 40, 5'9", 5'10". But everybody knew he was getting the ball. He ran every route like he was getting the ball, and he got the ball, right? So I think there's a certain level of confidence that comes with experience. Sometimes you get a Jeremiah Smith that it comes very quickly. But I would say Malachi Tony, as a freshman, has that. Where right now, as we sit here, not even play the snap. When he runs routes, he thinks the ball's coming to him. With Daniels, quarterbacks look for him. He's been a 1,000-yard receiver in college before. He just has that sort of urgency in what he does. Whereas I think Josh Moore, it's not that he lacks confidence. He's figuring it out still. So it's not like I don't see a situation where right now against Notre Dame, Josh Moore, Beck's going to go, hey, Josh Moore, get out there. I know you're going to get open and catch this ball no matter what, and I'm going to throw it to you, right? I think that's going to take some time. But once he has a couple big games and he realizes, hey, these guys can't really stop me, then you will see that momentum pick up. But I think what Daniels brings, and Pete, you've been all over CJ Daniels just as far as this year, and the more I see it, the more I agree with you. He just gives you that confidence of like, hey, he's going to do everything he can to get open. He's going to be in the right place. If I throw it to him, he's going to make the contested catch. I know what I'm going to get there. Whereas with Moore, he's just young and he's still learning, but he has a couple big games. Maybe by the time you get to like November, if he's been in the offense, he might be that guy. So we'll see how it goes, but that's how I would break it down as of right now.
Morning, everyone who's on with us today. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as we keep you guys covered all camp long with the latest from Canes practice. A-Rob asking if JoJo if he's going to play the slot. Man, I think ultimately that might be his best position, D. But he's got Malachi Tony there and some others, so that's a tough battle, man. But JoJo, look, they're gonna obviously looks like gonna give him that number one, so that tells you what they think about him in the grand scheme of things here, and think he's a player who deserves that number. But it's a battle right now, man. It's a real battle. I personally do think slot would probably be his best spot, man. I continue to think that strength is going to be a factor for him on the outside.
I mean, look, Jacoby George played on the outside and was very productive at that spot. So if I were to kind of lay it all out, I would say, and this is not a perfect comparison because these are all their own players, and some of these guys we haven't really seen yet in real games. So this is just kind of, if I were to just generally put these guys in boxes that people might be familiar with from last year under Shannon Dawson and Kevin Beard, I would say you put CJ Daniels in the Horton seat. You put Malachi Tony in the Restrepo spot in a lot of ways, mentally, skill-wise, etc. I'd put JoJo Trader more in that Jacoby George category, who was not a slot necessarily. He was not the most physical guy, but had body control, was pretty smooth, did some of those things. And then I'd put Keelan Marion from BYU in that Sam Brown category, strong guy, explosive, probably more of the chunk plays than, hey, I'm looking for this guy on third down. So that's how I would lay all four of those guys out right now. They're all their own players. It's not a perfect comparison, but if I'm putting them in boxes, that's probably how I would lay those guys out right now. But, switching gears to the second guy that's really caught my attention, Pete, is Alex Bauman from Tulane.
For sure.
You talked about him before the season that he was getting.
I talked about him. That was one of the first guys I talked about too in my first practice report, because he's huge, man. People don't realize how big that guy is.
I didn't realize it. I thought he was going to be a smaller pass receiver. He has size. He's a big guy. He's from New Jersey. He's from by Jersey Shore. Played basketball. He's a really good basketball player, actually. Like we always watch the basketball highlights. I will be honest with you. Aside from maybe Cam Ward, who was the leading scorer of his team, the best basketball highlights I've seen of all these guys was Bauman. Man, he was like handling the ball, like big guy, 6'4", 6'5", heavy, and he was handling the ball, playing with a really high skill level. So I was impressed by Bauman, the athlete. He also played defense. Some people think he was actually ranked coming out of New Jersey as a defensive player. So he has some of that attitude to him. And then I interviewed him for Media Day. Really cool guy. He is very much like the whole tight end room is, especially when we talk about like, Bauman, Gilbert, Schott, Ruskovich, because Lofton's like his own category, man. He's just like, he's just a different dude. He is a weapon. But those guys obviously are straight tight ends. And it's kind of like, I compare it to like a frat. You see Bauman, you see Gilbert, you see Brock Schott, Ruskovich, they're always kind of like horsing around, but not like in a goofy, like, hey, we're not paying attention in a football way. More just like, hey, man, like they're just like, they're jocks in a good way. They like to hit the weight room. You could tell in the summer all those guys hit the weight room hard. They like to block and hit. They're competitive. They're athletes. I think all of those guys. I don't know about Ruskovich, but definitely Shot, Gilbert, and Bauman played hoops. They're just kind of those kind of guys, and being around them, seeing how they interact, seeing how they compete on the field, which is the most important, obviously, seeing how they move around. That's one group that's arrow up to me, and I think Bauman is right at the top of that. Is he going to be Elijah Arroyo speed wise? That's not going to happen. Arroyo's, runs a 4.5. He's going to be making an impact in the NFL this year as a rookie, but he's closer. Not to forget Arroyo, put him out of the picture. Bauman's closer to being an upper level ACC tight end than I thought he was. Made a great one-handed catch. I know you saw that, Pete, right there in the one-on-ones where he basically just reached out, brought it back to himself, finished the play. I think this guy's going to be very, very good, and it's going to give you some flexibility to use Lofton pretty much everywhere you want.
And you mentioned Luka Gilbert. He's another one that I've been a big fan of since he came in. And I got a couple texts about him yesterday from two different people saying that he looks like he's a dude. And that's what I thought about him just the first few times I saw him, man, because you saw the sheer size that he brought. There was a lot of talk like, is this guy a future tackle when he got to Miami? But he was not stiff, man. He was not – is he the most fluid receiver down the field in terms of his movement? No, but he's also, again, I say it with these sort of guys, like it's not a tell when he's out there that he's going to be blocking or it's going to be a run play if you're to be out there. Like he has some ability as a pass catcher that he's just so big, man. And if he kind of just he kind of just boxes out the guy behind him, like it's going to be hard to get around him as a defender. That's just how big he is. So yeah, definitely agree with you.
Before we change the subject, so he's a guy that stood out to me as well. You mentioned the word fluid. I think he is pretty fluid. His routes are actually very nice for being 6'7". Yeah. If you said a weakness for him, he is not the most explosive guy in the world. So if he had Brock Shots explosiveness, this guy would be like a top 10 pick. He'd be unreal. Doesn't have that. But what he has is like the height at 6'7", 260. He likes to block, but just as a receiver, he does run good routes. And anything in his range, he's getting. Honestly, as great as Arroyo was, and Arroyo was the best, I think he was the best tight end in the country last year. I know that's a hot take, but we'll see how that ages over time. Gilbert, in terms of catch radius, is one of the best I've seen, man, in a while in Miami. I mean, he really can go outside his frame and get the ball. You said boxing out. That's a great way to describe it. I'm shocked at how good he is at that. We'll see how it is in games when you're dealing with real defensive backs, all the disclaimers. But he could potentially be a guy that quarterbacks look to on third down and say, I don't care if he's covered. I'm throwing it up, and I think he's going to get it. Mike Gesicki was probably a more explosive athlete, but it's kind of like that. Remember Mike Gesicki for the Dolphins, where you throw it anywhere in that area, and he would just be kind of adjusting to it and going and getting it. There's a little bit of that.
Gesicki was your favorite tight end ever, right?
The softest player in Miami Hurricane and Miami Dolphins history. Gilbert can block, by the way, so I wouldn't put that part of it on him. Gilbert loves to block, but you remember Gesicki, because Gesicki was a great athlete, but
all the highlights were him jumping and dunking in the gym,
right? And like he never really got a lot of separation. They'd throw it to him, and he just make these crazy kind of like
contested catch monster. Yeah,
that's what Gilbert is with the blocking part as well.
All right, so we got a second round comparison after two practices here. Yeah. We got a second round comparison for Luka Gilbert. We're off to a flying start here through 2 days here. I can't wait to see what we get the rest of the way. But yeah, D. So you talked about the tight end group there. Let me see. Who else should I? I mean, running backs group. I would also say. Which I kind of alluded to in the beginning in terms of how it looks, but we know that the top three guys, Fletcher, Lyle, Marty Brown, are all going to get a lot of touches, but Gerard Pringle is someone who in limited. It's not like he's broken, like, at least from what I've seen, like 50, 60-yard touchdown runs or anything, but just talking to some people, the phrase I used was light on his feet, right? Some of these other guys, we understand they aren't going to be squeaking through tiny holes and bursting through there with lightning speed. I just think Pringle is not trying to bounce everything outside every time he gets the ball for being a smaller back. He can kind of slither through those tight creases and boom, he's gone. But it looks like he's floating out there a little bit, which if a defense is seeing these 220-pound backs all game long, even, Jordan Lyle probably 210 or so, like it's going to be a change of pace when you see a Gerard Pringle get in there.
Yeah, appreciate you, Q. Yeah, hit that like button, subscribe. We're doing stuff every single practice, every single day. We're on here giving you the latest. So on Jared Pringle, obviously I'm in a baseball frame of mind because baseball's in full bloom. I was just at the game yesterday. It's like the pitching staff in the bullpen. So let's say you got starting pitcher.
Hopefully not the Yankees bullpen.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say you got a starting pitcher who's out there pumping sinkers, heavy ball, just really pounding you. And then you can bring a guy out of the pen who's throwing 99, 100 with a rising fastball, and you're like, whoa, that's your Jared Pringle, right? He's different than Lyle. He's different than Fletcher. He's different than Marty Brown, but he is electric, and he can really, really cause damage. Yeah, shout out to CJ Cephas, South Florida's own, heading to the big leagues. You didn't look at this guy and think he was a big league first baseman just from the body, but man, all he does is hit, and he's hit his way to the big league. So shout out to CJ Cephas.
Armando, our boy, asking, he says, Marty Brown looks the part. Do you guys see him getting significant amount of touches behind Fletcher and Lyle? 100%. We've done this before on the show, but last year Lyle got 50-something touches, right? And he was back number 3. I think they're going to run the ball more this year. I think it's going to be a little bit more balanced in that aspect. Martinez and Fletcher were getting a bulk of the carries. Martinez was really the bell cow. And then I just think it's going to be spread out a little bit more. And you're going to run it more. You're not going to pass as much as you did because you had Ward. So to me, I see him getting, if we're going off of what Lyle had last year in the 50 range, I would say 100 touches or so for Marty Brown, which, comes out to 7-8 touches a game, pretty much. Yeah. And it could be, by any given game could be different. But he's going to be a part of this offense, no doubt.
I heard one thing too about Marty Brown talking to people yesterday. End of games, right? When the teams are really tired and worn down, and you're dealing with Fletcher and Lyle all day, and you got to deal with this guy. Not fun. There's not a lot of. He is going to be one of the best running back 3s, if he is running back 3, that we've had in a while, and that you're seeing around the country. If you put him on like some of these other teams that have electric backs, like a Pittsburgh, that he would be the power back. He's got that. He is overqualified for his current role, and I think he's going to show that pretty early. Like you said all summer, we talked about, he is impressive, but we got to see him in pads. So